Test, test. Hello, hello. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Kabarett for January 10th, 2019. That's the first time I ever said 2019, I think. With me today, as always, is my lovely, lovely puppy friend. Good boy. How do you do, sir?
What's going on, Dan? How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well, thanks. I'm finally feeling better after over a week of pretty vicious illness, like so many other people these days. I'm finally feeling ready to take on the world again. As you can see by these boxes, I'm moving out of my apartment into
And
Green
into the compound, huh?
into the compound. Sort of, yeah. But yeah. How are you? How are you, sir?
Not bad. Another day in the life. Just trying to keep my ear to the ground and see what's going on. There's a lot of news, a lot of news to cover, but I think we'll just pick one or two things and just start at it.
Yeah.
Anything you want to pick up with first?
Well, I think I think we should start with the two big stories of the week: the ongoing government shutdown, and the other one being connected to it, Trump's recent immigration speech, whatever you'd call it, address. I think Trump's address to the nation, and what we think about it. And let's get it out. So the government's been shut down for. It kind of blows my mind because everyone's making a huge deal about it. They're like, it's almost the longest shutdown ever. And no government has been shut down for more than apparently 3 weeks or whatever. And that kind of is remarkable to me because I gotta say I haven't noticed any change in my life whatsoever. I would have sworn that the government's been shut down longer before. Apparently not.
Yeah, I
So what
just
do you
really
think?
don't. I really don't even like when they say government shutdown.
Yeah.
They make it seem like the post office isn't even running. I mean,
Right. The post office is
it's
certainly is running.
right. I
Yeah.
mean, the Department of Education is completely operational.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know,
The military is.
military is definitely still online. The idea that it's a government shutdown and we're not even operational right now. I mean, nothing is happening, and
Yeah.
this is what it feels like when the government just isn't around. That whole way of selling this is just not at all the reality. It's
Yeah.
several departments. Most of these people are being furloughed
Right.
and will receive back pay.
Yes.
So, I mean, everyone just calm the fuck down. I mean, it's not as though, like I said, it's like everything's still running.
Yeah.
Everything's still running. What, you can't go to a national park or something
I
like that?
did have I did have one issue, come to think of it, that that did involve the government shutdown where it did affect my life. On New Year's Day, I traveled to Joshua Tree National Park, and lo and behold, I totally had forgotten until I arrived. The government was shut down, and so when I arrived at the entrance to the park, I got to just drive right in instead of paying $30. So
Oh, the horrors of the government
yeah,
shutdown.
exactly,
You heard it here first, folks.
exactly. I
Instead of
got
paying $30 to just be on land that was more than likely illegally seized by the U.S. government,
yeah.
yeah, now you just get to drive on it. So,
Right. What very funny though, you know how leftist type people are always talking about how it's like, oh, the U.S. government is totally illegitimate, and this is the native land, this is the tribal land, and yet then they're like, oh, the government's shut down. This is horrible. And it's like, okay, well, is it a legitimate government or not? If it's an illegitimate government, who cares? Or isn't it even a good thing that it gets partially shut down?
I mean, I thought the idea that the new Third Reich, essentially, of the United States closing down several departments would be somewhat of a small victory.
Yeah.
But what did I know? They seem more upset about it than Republicans. So
Yeah, most Republicans seem pretty fine with it. But who knows?
do you know anyone? Do you know anyone that is being furloughed or isn't being paid?
No, my uncle works for the post office, but so he's still working. I can't think of anyone else. I mean, I know some teachers, but they're all working. So I don't know anyone offhand. What about yourself?
I do know a couple of people in certain government positions. I mean, just two people,
Yeah,
which isn't like a wide array of, you know,
sure.
the masses of government workers that aren't working. I don't know. I just it always bugged me. It's like it's a government shutdown. It's not. It's like several departments are just being the sacrificial lamb to make this a political move. And if you ever wanted to feel like a pawn in a bigger game,
Yeah,
make it, just jump to a moment where it's a government shutdown and places like NASA, uh, Border Patrol or something like that. I think there's a few other agencies that just are like, we'll pay you later, just not now. And watch how people react as though we have burned down, the Capitol building. Like it's just we don't have a government now.
right, right. Yeah, and they're like, well, but technically, it's more expensive to shut down the government than to. It's like, okay, well, whatever. I get it. I'm sure that's true, but regardless, like the other thing is, let me talk a little bit about like stuff that bothers me about libertarian type people is that they're always like, oh my God, how can you spend that money? We need to get our budget in order. It's so important. What can we have to make sure that every dollar is accounted for. But then at the same time, they're the first to acknowledge that like money is worthless, and that we went off the gold standard and then we went off the Bretton Woods and now our money is basically nothing anyway. So what difference does it make if we spent a bunch or not? Like, is there really a big difference between 100 fake dollars and 1,000,000 fake dollars? I don't know.
It's interesting that you say fake money. I do believe in inflation. I do believe that the government has been printing money and getting off the gold standard and not having any sort of hard assets to really back up our currency has been a issue.
Sure, a horrible issue.
Yeah,
But
it's been
I mean, I feel like we're past the Rubicon, personally.
Yeah,
So,
you might be right on that. I never really, I don't know, maybe I have a never say die attitude when it comes to
yeah,
the US debt ceiling and our general debt to begin with.
well, I respect that a great deal.
Maybe there's a way out. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
holding on. I'm holding on right now. Maybe we can make this work, man. It's like trying to keep it together with a girlfriend that you just know it's not going to work out. You're just trying to play damage control at this
Right.
point. Look, we know it's over, but let's just fix this before we really call it quits. I don't
Well,
know.
yeah.
And then Bitcoin would be sort of that like online love interest that you really don't know is real or not.
but you're willing to risk it all to try to make it happen.
You're just kind of like playing with this idea, like, I don't know, maybe this could be something. There's glimmers of it being something real.
Yeah, for sure. I'm very optimistic on Bitcoin. Probably too optimistic on Bitcoin, all things considered. But regardless,
that's okay. It's if we can be optimistic about one thing, shouldn't we be at this point?
Yes.
So I do. Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah. So the government is shut down. We know this for a fact. Question is, what does that mean, and why does that matter? And moreover, why is the government shut down to begin with? Want to get into that?
Sure. Yeah. Let's get into that. It would, again, we said that this was, plain politics, and it would appear as though this is plain politics over funding of the wall.
Right.
The fucking wall. I can't stand this, man. It's such. This is going to be Republicans' Obamacare.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is going to be their baby.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I think a lot of Republicans really don't even care all that much.
No.
Just like Democrats probably didn't really care all that much whether or not, Obamacare was a real thing or not. Honestly, I really feel as though a lot of Democrats would have been fine with just, fixing insurance agencies and, and their special treatment that they were getting from the government. I'm sure that would have been a victory for them, as long as people had more options, as long as the price of healthcare in general went down, they'd be fine. Yeah. I think very much like Obamacare, this is a giant, major project from like a centralized government planning point of view that is not going to do its intended mission, which would be to stave off illegal immigration.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, it's a giant money pit. And it's just, as someone who believes in a limited government, I also recognize that I don't think that it's, again, I don't think financially speaking it's feasible. I think major government projects like these become places where you might as well just set billions of dollars on fire and just save yourself the time. I also think that we are in a country, which means we do have borders, which means we are a sovereign state, which means we should be protecting our country, and we should have we should enforce the laws at the border, which is like you can't come in illegally. So that all makes sense, but that's it used to be a fairly mainstream idea. Right. And I just don't know why we've kind of like, it feels like we're jumping the shark a little bit. It's as though no borders, no wall, no USA at all, or it's build the wall and Mexico's paying for it. And it's such a stark, it's a polarization of opinions that is just, I don't know, it screams strictly political. It's not as though anyone is talking honestly about like, hey, maybe we need to like reform immigration. Like, no, that I haven't heard that yet. I heard build the wall, fuck your wall. That's what I've been hearing. That's the thing that's scary. It's like listening to children argue over what their, I don't know, senior project is going to be. It seems so infantile. It really does. I don't know. That's my initial gut reaction from this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is childish situation. But at the same time, I get it, and like politics is increasingly childish. I mean, it's always been childish and simple and goofy, and it's increasingly that way these days. And so I don't have strong opinion on the wall. Honestly, if anything, like I say, why the heck not? Who cares? At least if at least when it comes to like the 5 billion or whatever Trump is asking for, I just think just give it to him and let it go. I don't understand. I don't think the Democrats really get much from this. I don't. I think that Trump will get. He's regardless. He's going to whatever he gets. He's going to spin it as a win, and and Democrats are probably not going to be happy. And so I think just let it go and move on. There's a million other things that are more interesting to deal with. And at the end of the day, like with our insane budget, which is just keeps growing under Republican leadership, no less, more and more, like 5 billion earmarked for a stupid wall that makes Trump feel good. I don't care. I think it's fine. And ultimately, as I do think that, and not just Trump though, it's like Trump supporters. Like I think that I guess like I think that people should generally get some semblance of what they voted for. I mean, I don't know that a wall is going to be that helpful, but it's very clearly Trump's signature. The signature mark that he campaigned on and that he won on. More Americans and certainly more Trump supporters claim immigration as, I think, their number one issue. I'm pretty sure that's right. Their number one issue right now, aside from anything else. So it's like, if that's what people care about, then that's what should be focused on. I do think people should generally get what they vote for. So
right, I agree. I agree with that. There is a degree of, well, we put you in office because we wanted this thing. Now give us the damn thing.
mm-hmm.
And I think that there's absolutely a degree of truth to that for sure. However, I also think that crazy large government programs are terrible, and they don't accomplish much of anything at all, rather than racking up more debt and just being generally inefficient and not even doing what they say they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
I would not personally want to fund a wall. I would love to fund some sort of immigration reform, because there are plenty of people who should be working in the U.S. or get a chance at citizenship in the U.S. and they can't. I think a lot of things like the drug war, which increases our security at the border, can easily be dispensed with if we legalize most of the drugs that are being smuggled into the country. I also feel as though migrant workers who work here illegally because the farms that they work on don't pay them on the books. What would be so bad if we had a program where we just basically got a head count and told the farmers, hey, you just got to pay a fee per worker, and you don't have to pay them minimum wage. You get to pay them whatever you want. You could pay them $3 an hour if you want. We just need you to register who's working on your farm, or who's working in your, at your store. I mean, that's all we care about. At the end of the day, it's security. Economics, I don't care about them paying taxes on what they earn. None of that. They could take all of it and go back to Mexico with the money they earn. That's why they're here. So I don't know. I feel as though there's a solution here that is based in reality. And the same thing is true when I think of like healthcare. It's like the insurance companies are the ones that are really putting us in a tough place. Maybe we should look into why there's such a special partnership between government and insurance companies and break that shit up. You know, I think there should be people out there that are trying to solve these problems, and at the end of the day, because it comes down to, well, getting what you wanted from when you voted, I think it comes down to what the general population thinks is the best way of fixing a problem. And honestly, you can't think that that's the best way. If the majority of us feel like we know how to solve a problem, I can guarantee that's probably not the way to solve the problem. You know, I leave it to, I don't want to sound elitist and say an expert, but that's not the point. I think it's, let's be real about where these problems come from and attack it from that direction. Clearly, what's happening with immigration at the border is economic, social, and not necessarily political in terms of, I don't think people are fleeing Mexico because of a corrupt government as much as they think America will give them a better life, or there's work to be had in America as opposed to Mexico. I also think that, you know, trafficking at the border has a lot to do with our war on drugs. And if we were just to solve these two problems, i.e., not get between a farmer and what they pay people, and also tell people that they're allowed to put in their bodies whatever they wish on their own free will, I don't know. I think we solve a lot of issues at the border, and even if there was a wall, I don't think that's solving anything. I really don't. So I just want to solve problems here, and I think a wall is a victory for those who are a wee bit more on the nationalist side, just like socialized medicine. Those who want socialized medicine, Obamacare was kind of like a win. And I don't know. I think that's why it's so politically charged, because it's not about, you know, making sure people are insured. It's about pushing a centralized form of healthcare.
Yeah.
And the same thing is true with the wall. I don't think it's about fixing immigration. I think it's about making a stance about a nation and its borders. And both of those things make sense to me. I mean, both of those things make complete sense to me. Why would I disagree with the mission of ensuring all Americans? Why would I disagree with the mission of establishing and enforcing a border of a nation? I don't know. I think both those things make complete sense to me. But at the same time, I think we're being disingenuous with what problems we're really trying to solve here.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I would say interesting that you mentioned the issues of human trafficking and drugs, which, yeah, I mean, I think certainly contribute to the problems that do exist on the border. But I will say, I consider human trafficking to be it seems to be a pretty big issue these days, and potentially a growing issue. And so that's why I think it's actually quite interesting indeed that recently, I think just today, there was a bill signed, an anti-human trafficking bill, signed into law by Trump, and obviously passed through Congress. But the strange thing is, I saw very little news about this, and this is something that is like a very real problem, as far as I can see, and it is vaguely tied to immigration, at least, but or at least the border. But you didn't see much of anyone touching this, and I wonder why. Did you hear about this at all? Actually, I don't think this. It is a perfect example. This article, it doesn't even. It says that Trump talks about human trafficking, but he actually signed a bill Here we go.
Well, I will say off the bat, the conversation around human trafficking has been growing, I'd say, over the past 2 years. Uh, it it definitely appears as though, I mean, Trump is one of those typical quote unquote like strong men, and I think when it comes to something as black and white as like human trafficking, I think he's someone who's like not in my house, that kind of a vibe.
Sure.
And clearly, it's a human rights issue. Clearly, so you have the left that is, should be up in arms with human trafficking.
Yeah,
I believe they are.
Instead, you get these sort of articles today. Do, 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 do.
What did you see some sort of reframing of this from the left?
Well, you got this. This was the news that they were reporting. President walks out of order and blah 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 blah. This stupid drama, this melodrama, as opposed to signing an actual bill, which I'm trying to find the details on. All I have is a headline and a blank. All I can find is a headline. Hold on, and
no content, huh?
Yeah, a headline and a blank black square.
Well, if that doesn't sum up the news cycle in a nutshell, I don't know what else does.
But I do think that there does seem to be a lack of interest from the media to talk about the human trafficking issue, and certainly the fact of the president signing a bill against a real issue, because they want to downplay the actual dangers of and that the idea that there is any issues with the border. But there is, I mean, human trafficking is certainly an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think this is, I mean, I think the media is actually falling into the same sort of, I don't want to say same trap. It's falling into this same sort of pattern that I had just mentioned with the politicizing of a wall or healthcare. The politicizing of the news is the same thing. It's no one wants to talk about what's really happening or like the nitty gritty of what it, oh man, there's a bill that was passed. What about his crime bill that was pushed through? I mean, I'm seeing no news on this stuff. No news on the laws and bills that are being proposed and the laws that are being passed. There's nothing on that. All I get to hear about is, he tells Pelosi, we don't have a deal then,
right.
Or like, I want my wall. I think it's again, it's people being disingenuous with what we're really trying to do here. You really should be trying to tell us the news. So if a bill is getting passed or he signs a piece of legislature, like, tell us, like, and cut the melodrama out. That's not what I'm here for.
Yeah. Meanwhile, to get this actual news about this actual bill, this new law, I have to go to the Christian Perspective website. And there's another one. The only other option I could find was Catholic Today. It's just crazy.
Speaking of crazy and Catholic, I really, before I forget,
sure.
Did you hear about the senator from California questioning, I believe it was a judge on his Catholicism, and if that would somewhat affect his judgment?
Wait, I mean, I know the last I heard was like the Dianne Feinstein thing way back.
This is fairly recent. And I came across this article, I want to say like a day or two ago.
Yeah, I didn't hear about this one.
Yeah, let me try and see if I could pull it up. But what I found to be interesting about that is the well, first of all, the Earl Scruggs Google Doodle, which is great. Scruggs of the a famed bluegrass musician. He had the Scruggs roll, which was a three-finger picking style.
Hmm.
But that is neither here nor there. But for all you bluegrass fans out there, that is a thing. Uh, uh, it was a California senator uh, who basically asked this judge, I believe it was a judge, whether his membership to the Knights of Columbus, a Catholic organization, would affect
Holy moly!
his and what I found to be interesting was the there was another Democratic senator who was like, let's not be the party that goes after Catholics, if that's okay. Like I thought we got past that with Kennedy.
Well, last
Um,
year there was a judge, a female judge, who was being um, she was going through the process of being confirmed for, I think, the Ninth Circuit, and Dianne Feinstein was questioning her, and she brought up, you're a Catholic, and I don't know about that. She said, the famous quote from Feinstein was, "I believe the dogma is strong within you."
what is that? I believe that I could feel the dark side of the force. What kind of
I know. It's pretty creepy and uncomfortable language. Yeah. I mean, look, we live in a time where being religious in any way is not super welcome. And
And look, I'm skeptical of that stuff. I'm skeptical of religion in general, but there is a law in the books that basically says that in order to become a a judge or anything like that, you don't have to pass some sort of religious test. That is part of the legal system. That you don't have to like pass a religious test in order to be serving government. And that's the thing that I'll take with a grain of salt when the senator from Hawaii said, "Oh, look, I'm just doing my job to make sure that this person wouldn't let their personal opinions on abortion cloud their judgment on
Mhm.
abortion." But in my opinion, I think it's kind of hard to separate the two, so it's a fair question. Uh, and at the same time, I think it's a little disturbing. I mean, that'd be like me asking, what if they asked you know, a Muslim, do you think, your religious affiliation will cloud your judgment on national security?
Mhm.
I mean, that would be beyond offensive.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing would be true in this situation. And uh, that Congresswoman pictured there,
Yeah.
put,
This is
put,
a Tulsi Gabbard, by the way.
yeah, she wrote an
Yeah.
opinion article that basically said, "Look, I don't want to be one of these people who, jump on the bandwagon that I thought we left behind in the 50s and 60s over what makes a good Catholic. Can we trust a good Catholic?"
Right.
Uh, and I
Yeah.
think there's good reasoning for that. I would also point out that on the left there is a strain of anti-Semitism too,
Oh,
because
yeah,
of the,
for
the
sure.
situation with Israel. So, I mean, again, they keep leaning more and more. It's hard for me to say, just as though I could also understand how people are saying, "Man, the right is getting more and more nationalist." It's like, okay, that's fair. I mean, do you agree that you guys are becoming more and more, well, uh, let's say Marxist? There's this anti-religious sort of
Mm-hmm.
fervor, a
Yeah.
distrust of Catholics and Jews.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, a willingness to kind of watch the country burn.
Yeah.
It's disturbing to me what I'm seeing on the left as much as I'm seeing stuff on the right. I think
Yeah.
there's sort of this I think you had mentioned this a couple of podcasts ago, but there's sort of this like this tacit like it would appear as though they're okay with it. And everyone's kind of like in agreement that it is mainstream to hold these opinions that the government, the United States in general, should kind of just go away and we should start anew with a more radical approach to government. I think, what was it, Cortez and how she's being treated by the media, in some ways, not in every way, in some ways, is a good example of how we're kind of just willing to allow these sort of radical ideas be said and not be challenged harshly because we're morally on board with what their aims are.
Yeah.
And I think that's dangerous. I think that's extremely fucking dangerous. And I don't know. A lot of people have picked up on what she's been saying and how unrealistic, economically speaking, her goals are.
Mm.
And at the same time, we're kind of just okay with the fact that she's in office without a legitimate plan, and that well, she means well. It's like, okay, so that's all it's going to take, just meaning well. Another YouTuber, Matt Christensen, did an excellent job breaking that down. And saying like, well, I mean, what do you think Republicans feel about Donald Trump? Yeah, what if we flipped on its head and say, yeah, maybe his plan is complete BS and it'll never work, but morally speaking, I find what he's doing to be extremely valuable. So why should I care? Which is the same argument that the left is making. Yeah, well, economically speaking, I have no idea how we would usher in this new utopia of everyone getting college education, healthcare, housing. But morally speaking, I'm on board, so I really don't care.
Yeah, no, I mean that's definitely true. The Trump supporters that I know, they see him as a good man at heart who's just trying to do his best. I mean, certainly that's what it. I guess I don't know too many Trump supporters in person. I know a few, but I think that seems to be the general tenor of his main basis of support. So.
Do you think he comes off as a good person?
What's that?
Do you think he even comes off as a good person?
Donald Trump?
Yeah.
Well, he's no doubt a flawed person. I think that he believes doing is right, and I think he views himself as a good person. I don't know. I think he seems. I think he's probably a better person than a lot of our past presidents, to be honest. I mean, I think he's probably in a weird way, a more honest person than past presidents. I just think he's a very different guy than anyone we've had in a long, long time. So, I don't know. I don't think, he's not a guy with a bunch of bodies buried. That's the thing, and he's not a guy that as far as I can tell, I mean, it seems very unlikely. I think he's just kind of a jocular, jovial sort of buffoonish figure.
I think he's been in the limelight for too long.
Yeah.
To kind of not, I mean, the majority of his life has been spent at the center of the New York real estate sort of conversation.
So, which means that he almost certainly has been involved in maybe some sleazy deals here and there. He's, womanized his share, no doubt. But it's not like, George H.W. Bush was like the head of the CIA. He was like, he knew where all the bodies were buried. He was no doubt involved in some deeply disturbing stuff. The Clintons are notoriously unethical, and they made their fortune in the public sector instead of the private sector, which, to me, reeks of much more sleaze and scumminess. And, I don't know about the Obamas, but I don't have anything really particularly negative to say about them.
Well, they're part of Netflix now, so there
Yeah,
you go, right?
yeah, but they're just Hollywood kind of vapid Hollywood folks. So, I don't know. I definitely don't think Trump is worse than any of those guys personally. I see them all as fairly equivalent to maybe. I mean, I think Hillary is very corrupt. I think George H.W. Bush is very, he was very scheming type of guy. I think his son was kind of a blundering guy. So I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion of it. I don't have a positive opinion of presidents in general. And because of that, I'd probably give Trump a little bit more of a pass because he is such an outsider. But, whatever. It's not like I don't know. What do you think?
I just think it's funny the concept that you have friends that are like, I feel like deep down he's just like, he's not even deep down. You're like, I feel like he's a good guy.
Yeah.
And in my mind, every time I see him on the news, he is taking a defensive posture and
Yeah.
shutting people down. Look, you don't know what you're talking about, or like, I don't answer fake questions from fake news anchors, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, you come off like, because you're constantly in combat with the people that you're speaking with,
Right.
you don't come across the most gentle soul. I just think it'd be hysterical to just see at the end of the day, him coming home to Melania and just being like, Melania, you have no idea how much I just want to be a good person in front of people, but they need me to be an asshole. Like,
Yeah.
I need to be an asshole again, and I can't for the life of me. I don't know how long I could keep doing this. Like, the idea that there's like an inner battle with him to keep up this. It is evidently this charade of the fact that he's like a hard-nosed, combative president who's gonna smack down the fake news organizations and push back against the radical left. And but deep down, he's just a good man who just wants peace on earth. And I think there is actually somewhat of a grain of truth in that. I think, like, like a lot of Austrian economists would support, war is bad for business. And I think he knows that.
Yeah.
Which is a main reason why I think he's talking about pulling out of Syria.
Which I hope he does. I'm still not convinced it'll happen. But look, I mean, at the end of the day, I will say, and I'm not a person who voted for him or, particularly likes him, but I think he strives to be a man of his word to a greater degree than any president in my lifetime. I mean, he really is actively working quite clearly to achieve his stated goals during his campaign for his constituents.
Yeah,
I mean,
that is pretty amazing, Dan. Like, you're right.
yeah.
What were his main goals? He was anti-war, which is
Yes. Yeah.
something to really think about. I mean, he is an outsider, as you had mentioned. That is not coming from the mainstream Beltway Republicans.
Right.
He's anti-war. I mean, what was it? Day one, he drops Moab. I remember that.
Yeah, right.
I was like, wow, I really went the other direction on that one. I don't know.
On the other hand, I mean, he's he's look. It's hard to know what any of this actually looks like without a little bit of time and distance context, but it from what it appears, he cleaned up the wars that Obama couldn't really get done, or according to some people, didn't even want to get done. And then he cleaned up a lot of that, and then he's pulling troops out. So it's like it's really hard for me to be particularly critical of how he's handled things in terms of war overseas foreign entanglements. I mean, it's he's doing things similarly to, frankly, how I would do them if I were in his position. Which is to say, try to get us out as quickly and as peacefully as possible. I mean, I know dropping a giant bomb isn't peaceful, but it seems to have worked. I mean, I don't like terrorists either. I want us to destroy ISIS as well. And so it's like he did make some headway against ISIS, and now he's pulling us out of Syria. And he's seemingly, I don't know much about what's going on in Korea right now, of course, but it seems like he handled that situation reasonably effectively.
Yeah, I mean, he is a president who's trying to denuclearize the Sinai Peninsula, so that's
Right.
pretty impressive. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah,
So
what was the other major thing he promised was the wall, and he's trying to deliver on that deal. Essentially, he's made with the Republicans, or with the voting base. Give me your votes, and I will return the favor. This is what you've promised me. Your vote, I'm going to return, my share of the bargain. So,
look,
interesting.
yeah, and I mean, I understand why Democrats don't want him to have it, because they want him to break his promise. That's where they see their job as, and I think to a degree they're right. But they're not, I don't think they're doing it in a very effective way. I think he's going to win inevitably. I think he's capable of holding out on this government shutdown longer than they are. And, we saw his address to the nation the other day. He delivered a live address about the need for a wall and our immigration woes. It was reasonably well done for a guy like Trump, who is a fairly bizarre communicator. But what was definitely striking is there was a rebuttal afterwards by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and they famously looked awful and embarrassing and, well, awful. So,
But, I mean, those two right there are a perfect example. It's like I can't listen to those people or Mitch McConnell. It's these people just ooze politics. Like nothing seems legitimate. I mean, if anything, like you had mentioned, Trump is a person who I kind of believe what he says because I don't think he has a filter. Not to say not having a filter is a bad thing or a good thing. It's just I kind of think he says what he thinks, and it may not be the most sound thought process, but I could take him at his word most of the times. I really feel that way because I don't think he's especially conniving the way a lot of politicians are, like Pelosi or Schumer or even McConnell.
yeah.
And look at these two people right here. Holy smokes. An American Horror Story right here.
I mean, if this is what a filter looks like, you really don't want a filter anymore.
No, you don't want to touch that.
They look ghoulish.
Right.
Yeah.
Are those horns coming out of? I don't know. They literally look. What the hell?
This is them looking as good as they possibly can, and they look like alien people.
Yeah, they look as though they're addressing people from another planet.
Yeah.
Hey,
they look like in a movie if aliens were trying to portray human politicians, this is what it would look like.
Oh my God.
It's just insane. So, I mean, is it any wonder that people will turn to Trump when this is what we have to work with?
Yeah, I think that you just summed up 2020 in a nutshell and why he's going to win. It's like, yes. Well, who else would you rather them? Who else would you expect these people to vote for? The general public when That's the status quo. Who else are they voting for? It will have to be another outsider like Trump, another populist like Bernie Sanders, because at least these people, Bernie Sanders is another guy. Like, I just kind of believe what he says. I think he is just so embedded into what he believes, what he knows, his philosophies, that even if I completely disagree with it, or I think it's coming from a complete ideological place, I believe he believes what he says when he answers questions,
Yeah.
which can get him into trouble, just like Trump.
Mm-hmm.
But it really should be those two that duke it out in 2020. These two
I think
old men is the other thing too. How old are they going to be?
In 2020, well, Trump will be maybe 73, 74, and Bernie will be, I think, 78 years young. So
holy smokes. I mean, at this point, can I wheel out the body of like Benjamin Franklin? Be like, look, I know you never held a state office, but
it's like,
let's make this happen.
Trump is about at least as old as Pelosi and Schumer. I think a few years older, but goodness, he looks way more human, way more alive, way more vibrant and healthy. And so I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to blame anyone for choosing him over the status quo.
Dan, speaking of appearances, can you please dive into this article? What the hell went down at Q13? What was this?
Yeah, so this is the other reason why Trump continues to remain popular, relatively. And for a president, I mean, I think he's pretty darn popular. His approval rating is hovering close to 50% these days. So a little under, but still, I mean, considering that's actually pretty good and way higher than Congress. So during the Trump address, a Fox affiliate in Seattle altered the video of Trump speaking in ways that are insane. And he did this live, and he didn't announce it or anything. I don't quite know if it was supposed to just be a joke, but this is what it looked like.
Hopefully, we can rise above partisan politics in order to support national security. Some have suggested a barrier is immoral. Then why do wealthy politicians?
So that's what he did live to the president and giving a live speech.
That's so bizarre.
Yes.
I mean, first of all, what do you think you're doing by doing that? I mean, do you think you're turning people off to the president because you make him look like a lizard person?
Right.
I mean, I don't get it. I don't get it.
It's exactly the type of antics that we've seen for the last 2 years that have pushed so many people away from the left and the Democrats. Because that sort of nonsense is not. It's not funny. It's just petty. And what bothers me is that we're entering a world where this is going to be more and more common, where we don't know what to believe. We don't know if we can believe our eyes at all. And so, we're just going to see these reporters increasingly abuse their role as, I guess, delegators of what's true and what's not, so seeing something like that, it's really unsettling. I don't care. I honestly don't care about Trump or the fact that he was made to look silly, but I do care about, the trust people have in their media and reporters, and so that it's at an all-time low, understandably. And the guy got fired. That's good, but
It is good. It is good because, like you had said, it's this sort of thing we've been seeing the past 2 years that has made me very nervous because it's not just the media, Dan. It's in the way they protest. It's in the way they've been deplatforming people who, and this category creep. It's not just white nationalists. It's Republicans or people on the center left.
mhm.
It's this by any means necessary. If we have to put a filter on the president to make him look like a frog, then well, damn it, we're gonna do that because it's about winning. It's about getting this guy out of office. I think it's such a dangerous path to walk on, and yet I feel like when I was a kid, I was told these lessons over and over again, ad nauseum,
Mhm.
and it's as though the majority of adults my age just don't want to remember the lessons of their forefathers. Like it's so creepy to me.
And it's like a lot of them are the people that were teaching us when we were children. It's very creepy and bizarre. I just feel like a whole generation of people just regressed into just immature little children in the last few years, and maybe they always have been, but something about this partisan age has brought out the worst in people, particularly people on the left. And obviously there's plenty of bad behavior on the right, but there isn't the same level of utter hate, utter contempt, and vicious winning by any means necessary tactics, and that they're honest about. They'll tell you that they hate the president, they hate Republicans, and they just want them destroyed. So I don't know. I don't think that it's healthy. I don't think it's helping, and yet here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean it's again, I think of all the lessons that generation had taught me that I really listened to. I mean, I remember hearing about the ACLU protecting Nazis in Washington State. Like I remember that. That was a big deal, and I had a bunch of lefty teachers who were like, "This is what freedom looks like, and it's important that we protect that." And at the same time, they opened up for discussion, and people did have the opinion. Well, I think when it comes to certain really disgusting opinions that have no place in society, we should do something. And the teacher would maybe gently press back. Oh, okay, well, doesn't everyone have an opinion that, and I thought we all did a good job identifying what the liberal position was and why that's important to keep that alive because of the American liberal tradition that it comes from, freedom. And I remember reading To Kill a Mockingbird talking about, well, false accusations and racism, and where the mob, the court of public opinion may be so undeniably strong in their judgment of someone, but the legal system, if handled correctly, could salvage an innocent human being. Even if that same legal system would let 10 guilty people walk, it was more important about saving the one innocent person.
Right.
And I remember having those discussions, and now it's as though we've just said, yeah, all that was bullshit. Like that's none of those lessons mean anything. Like it's all about Trump and his Nazi fan base. Like it's crazy to me. It's so disheartening to see us erode the fabric of what I was told American values, consisted of. It's pretty alarming to me.
Well, I hear you. It's very startling, and I do believe it's gonna where I named this stream the relative calm before the definite storm, because I do actually feel we're in a pretty calm place right now compared to where we were and where we, I think, will be soon. And with the recently all but sainted Ruth Bader Ginsburg's illness, and her stepping down from the Supreme Court imminent, I think it's going to get really crazy really soon. So,
You know, she was holding out for a Democrat again,
oh sure, of course, but
and it's just not going to happen.
and it is astonishing because I mean, it looks like Trump is going to get 3 picks, three. All right. Okay, so I guess I'm back. I don't know what happened. Lost you guys for a minute there. Let me grab Good Boy, and then we'll get this on track. All right. Where's Good Boy? All right, well, anyway, we're going to end things out. Sorry about the whole fallout there. Let me grab... Okay. Sent that. I don't know, man. We live in weird times. So, what do I think is going to happen with this shutdown? I think the Democrats will fold. I think Trump will get $5 billion for a wall, which is not going to mean much. He's not going to do too much with it. There's only so much you can do with that kind of money. And then that'll be that. And hopefully we'll move on and hopefully be able to do something productive. I'm happy that the human trafficking bill passed. I think that's great, actually. That's the sort of thing that I like to see. Prison reform a few weeks ago, happy. The human trafficking bill, very happy. So we'll see. Well, hopefully something good happens. Good boy?
Yeah, I'd say overall, maybe the sky isn't falling as much as we keep hearing.
Yeah.
Maybe there is a silver lining to the Trump presidency, in that maybe some of the promises and some of the legislation that is getting passed is not getting a lot of headlines or media attention, but it is being put on the books. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully, the wall doesn't become the quagmire that Obamacare was.
Yeah.
And that's it. Well, it's been a pleasure as always, Dan. And let's talk again soon.
Sounds good, buddy. All right, everybody. Take it easy. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.